In this video, I'm going to take 3 really simple bebop phrases, and then I'm going to show you how you can make some really great lines using those. And the most important thing you're going to learn from this video is actually that you're going to start to hear what is a solid and what is a boring bebop line, because I'm sure we've all been struck down by the curse of the Bad Bop licks, where you're playing all the right notes, you're playing all the right arpeggios, and it still doesn't sound that good. So in this video, I'm going to help you start to develop a better ear for bebop melodies and how to create them, how to play better sounding, more interesting lines. My name is Jens Larsen. Learn jazz, make music. Let's start with a line that really doesn't work. No wrong notes, everything is clear, it's the right scale, there's the right arpeggio, and there's also some chromaticism, but it still doesn't really sound that interesting. And that's because it's really tied to the heavy beats and it's always moving in a predictable way. Once it starts moving somewhere, it's gonna go from heavy beat to heavy beat, and then it's going to change direction. And you kind of want to break that up, and there are a few ways you can do that. If I just take the 3 phrases that I played in the intro and tie those together, then I get a line like this. So here the melody is skipping around a lot more. It still makes sense, of course, because you don't want to just skip around so that it sounds random. You still want it to make sense as a melody, but it also has to be less predictable and not just like a scale exercise put into a piece of music. And that's what I want to explore in this video and show you how to make lines that sound more interesting and less predictable, but still are strong melodies. The first phrase is really just an enclosure of the 3rd of the D minor chord. So it's an enclosure of F. And the way it's constructed is it has a diatonic note above, G, and then a chromatic note below, E. So E in this case is chromatic, because it's a half step under the F, but it's also diatonic. That's actually a little bit a coincidence. And if you're writing lines on a D minor 7 chord, then this is something you want to check out for all the notes in the arpeggio. That would be this exercise. And as I'm going to show you in just a few seconds, it's also really important that you know how to play these enclosures, but then turning around the order of the notes, so you get this. Let me show you how important the direction of the melody and the enclosures really is. So if we take a really simple melody, just a descending scale run. Now I want to add a chromatic enclosure around the last note, the D, and I can do that in 2 different ways. I can do this way, and I can also turn around the enclosure, and then I get... And I think you can already hear quite clearly how just phrase is a lot better, it's a lot more interesting, because it's skipping around more and it still makes sense. And this is something that you really want to work with. You really want to check out how you can make enclosures and other interesting melodic concepts pop a little bit more in your lines and make the lines in themselves a little bit more interesting, a little bit more surprising. And here clearly the difference is that we don't have just one direction happening and then just a short leading note at the end. We really have this skip down to the C sharp. That's really making all the difference. And if you take this way of using the chromatic enclosure and turn that into a complete line, then you get something like this. What you want to spend time on with material like this is that you want to sit down and write some lines. You want to explore how you can make something that sounds good with this material and really get it into your ears and really figure out how it works the best. That's going to help you play much better lines. And keep in mind that that's actually also how people like Barry Harris teach bebop in their masterclasses. They compose lines and write choruses using those techniques, and in that way demonstrate it to the students.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Besides the enclosures, I'm going to cover another way that you can use arpeggios to sound really great in your lines. But first I'm going to look at how you can insert some larger intervals into a scale run and still make that sound like a melody and not just some sort of random ringtone. So in the second phrase that I played in the intro, I had this. And you can look at this phrase as being a scale run from F down to D. And then I'm inserting a lower chord tone, because A is of course the 5th in the chord, so between the F and the E. And in fact you can use any chord tone in between those 2 notes. So instead of using the low A, I can also use the low D. Or I can go higher and then use the A an octave higher. And a good way to make some variations on this is to start not on the third but also on the other chord tones. You can turn this into some really solid building blocks by creating an exercise using the notes of the D minor triad. That would be something like this. You can also turn this into a line. That would sound something like this. I think it's nicely ironic that I'm demonstrating all these bebop melodies and bebop skills using a single chord, namely the D minor 7, which is essentially a modal background. So probably we have a lot of bebop stars spinning in their graves. The third phrase that I used in the intro was a way of playing an arpeggio using 8-note triplets, like this. I'm sure you've already heard this used several times with Parker, Wes, Judge Benson. Pretty much everybody uses this line, and it's definitely something you want to have in your vocabulary. Now, when we're improvising over a D minor 7, then it makes sense to use this from the different chord tones of the D minor triad. So in this context, that means that we can use the D minor 7 arpeggio, we can use the F major 7 arpeggio and the A minor 7 arpeggio. And if you chain those together and make that into an exercise, then it sounds like this. And of course, it also makes sense to check these out in the descending version. That would be this exercise. And a lick using these arpeggios and also the other devices that I've covered in this video would sound like this. As you can probably tell from the examples in this video, then you can get really a lot if you dig into some of these bebop phrases and really learn how to use them, how to write better melodies with them and be creative with them. So if you want to take that a bit further, then check out this video where I'm discussing not only how to study bebop, but also why you should study bebop. And it's going to give you a lot of different things that you can check out and add to your own playing.